The champagne bubbles caught the evening light streaming through the colonial mansion's tall windows, casting tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. My brother Peter's wedding reception was everything you'd expect from a successful attorney marrying into old New England money. Elegant, expensive, and absolutely suffocating. I adjusted my tie and watched Erica across the dance floor, her burgundy dress catching the warm glow of the string lights overhead. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. Even after 18 years of marriage, she still turned heads. Right now, she was laughing at something my cousin Janet had said, wine glass tilted at that precise angle that meant she was relaxed, genuinely happy. For a moment, I almost forgot why my stomach had been twisted in knots for the past 3 months. "You look like someone stole your cake," Mick appeared beside me, his weathered face creased in that knowing grin he wore when he was about to dispense unwanted wisdom. My old boxing coach had cleaned up nice for the occasion, his gray hair slicked back and his one good suit pressed to perfection. "Just thinking," I said, taking a sip of my beer. The local brewery stuff Peter had insisted on serving. Everything had to be perfect for his perfect day. "Dangerous habit for a man your age, Danny." Mick's eyes followed my gaze to Erica. "Especially when it involves the missus." I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That my wife of nearly 2 decades had been slipping away from me like sand through my fingers? That she'd missed our anniversary dinner last month for a hospital emergency that turned out to be a staff party I saw posted on Instagram? That she'd started guarding her phone like it contained state secrets? The band struck up something slow and romantic. Peter swept his new bride onto the dance floor with the kind of theatrical flourish that had made him popular in high school and successful in court. Other couples joined them, including Erica and... Wait, where was Erica? I scanned the reception area, my eyes moving methodically from table to table. The Granite Street neighborhood had turned out in force tonight, along with Peter's law firm colleagues and his wife's society friends. But no burgundy dress, no familiar laugh cutting through the music. "Looking for someone?" Melanie Chen materialized at my elbow, her smile sharp as broken glass. Erica's best friend and the hospital's HR director had never liked me much, though she hid it behind a veneer of professional courtesy. "Just enjoying the party," I said evenly. Erica stepped outside to take a call. "Work, you know how it is?" Melanie's tone suggested she knew exactly how it was, and that I didn't. My chest tightened. "On a Saturday night? Healthcare doesn't keep banker's hours, Danny. Surely you understand that, working at the hospital yourself." The condescension in her voice made my jaw clench. Yes, I worked at the hospital. As an operations manager, making sure the place didn't fall apart while people like Erica made the big decisions and collected the big paychecks. It was honest work, important work, but it didn't come with the prestige of being an administrative director. "Of course," I said. "Excuse me." I made my way through the crowd, nodding at neighbors and family friends, my smile feeling like it might crack my face. The mansion's French doors opened onto a stone terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from someone's fireplace. I found Erica at the far end of the terrace, partially hidden by a trellis heavy with late blooming roses. Her back was to me, phone pressed to her ear, voice low and intimate. I know. I wish I could leave early, but his family would never forgive me." A pause, then a soft laugh that made my stomach drop. "You're terrible." "Yes, I'm thinking about it too." I stepped back into the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the gap in the roses, I could see her face in profile. She was smiling the way she used to smile at me, back when we were young and stupid and thought love could conquer anything. "I have to go. Someone might notice I'm gone." Another pause. "I love you too." The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the stone wall, fighting the urge to confront her right there, in front of God, and half of Granite Street. But that wasn't my way. I'd always been a planner, a man who thought 3 moves ahead. It's what made me good at my job, keeping a massive hospital running smoothly while everyone else focused on their little piece of the puzzle. Erica ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring out at the gardens. When she turned to come back inside, her expression had shifted into the pleasant mask she wore at social functions. The woman who'd just whispered, "I love you," to someone who wasn't her husband had vanished. "There you are." She smiled as she spotted me near the doors. "I was wondering where you'd gotten to." "Just getting some air." The crowd was getting a bit much. "I know what you mean." She slipped her arm through mine, the gesture automatic after so many years. "Melanie said you were looking for me." "Just wanted to make sure you were okay. You seemed to disappear." "Work call. Dr. Patterson is having issues with the new scheduling system." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly I almost admired the craftsmanship. "You know how these doctors can be when technology doesn't cooperate? I nodded, playing my part in our little theater. Crisis averted? For now. Shall we go back in? Well, I think they are about to cut the cake. We rejoined the reception, and I watched my wife charm my relatives and neighbors with the same skill she used to manage hospital politics. She was good at her job. I had to give her that. People trusted her, respected her opinion, came to her with their problems, including apparently problems that required intimate phone conversations on Saturday nights. The cake cutting went off without a hitch, Peter and his bride performing the ritual with practiced smiles while cameras flashed. I applauded at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, made small talk with people I'd known my entire life. But my mind was elsewhere, turning over what I'd heard, what I'd seen. This wasn't the first time Erica had slipped away from a family event to take a work call. Now that I thought about it, it had been happening more and more frequently over the past few months. My nephew's graduation party in August, my mother's birthday dinner in September, the neighborhood block party just 2 weeks ago. Each time, Erica had found an excuse to step away, to handle some urgent hospital business that couldn't wait. How many times had I made excuses for her? How many times had I told myself that her job was demanding, that she was dedicated, that I should be proud of her commitment? You're quiet tonight. Erica's voice cut through my thoughts. We were driving home through the familiar streets of our neighborhood, past the row houses and corner stores that had defined my world for 43 years. Just tired. It was a long day. Peter looked happy, didn't he? And Rebecca was absolutely glowing. First marriages usually are happy, I said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in my tone. Erica glanced at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just an observation. We drove the rest of the way in silence, the radio playing softly between us. Our house on Granite Street looked the same as always, modest but well-maintained, with the new shutters I'd installed last spring and the small garden Erica had planted when we first moved in, back when we still did things together. Inside, Erica kicked off her heels and headed straight for the kitchen. I'm going to make some tea. Want some? I'm going to check my email, I said, already heading for the small office we'd set up in what used to be the dining room. Work can wait until Monday, Danny. So can Dr. Patterson's scheduling problems, but that didn't stop you from taking his call. She paused in the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable. Is there something you want to say to me? I met her eyes, searching for some trace of the woman I'd married, the woman who used to tell me everything, who used to consider me her best friend and closest confidant. No, I said finally. Nothing that can't wait. She nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the kettle being filled, the soft clink of china being arranged, domestic sounds that should have been comforting but instead felt like a performance. In my office, I powered up the laptop and stared at the blank screen. My reflection looked back at me from the dark monitor, a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing a suit that had seen better days. When had I become invisible in my own marriage? The kettle whistled from the kitchen, sharp and insistent. I heard Erica moving around, probably going through her evening routine. Soon she'd come upstairs, wash her face, brush her teeth, slip into bed beside me like she had thousands of times before. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I'd heard her say, I love you, to someone else. I opened a new document and began to type, my fingers moving slowly at first, then with growing certainty. I'd always been good with details, good at documenting problems and finding solutions. It was time to put those skills to work. At the top of the page, I wrote, Timeline, Erica's behavior changes. Then I began to list everything I could remember. Every missed dinner, every late night at the office, every time she'd chosen work over family. The pattern that had been building for months, maybe longer, finally coming into focus. By the time I heard her footsteps on the stairs, I had 3 pages of notes and a growing sense of clarity. Whatever was happening, whatever she was hiding, I was going to find out. And then I was going to decide what to do about it. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of October day that reminded you winter was coming whether you were ready or not. I stood at the kitchen window, watching Erica load her briefcase into her silver Honda Civic. She moved with purpose, checking her phone twice before backing out of the driveway. The house felt different when she was gone. Quieter, but also somehow more honest, as if the walls could finally relax and stop pretending everything was normal. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and opened my laptop on the kitchen table. The document I'd started Saturday night had grown over the weekend, filled with dates, times, and observations that painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. The phone calls that sent her stepping outside or into another room. The new clothes she claimed were for work functions I was never invited to attend. The way she'd started showering immediately when she came home, as if she needed to wash something away. My phone buzzed. A text from my supervisor at the hospital. "Danny, need you to cover the morning briefing. Sarah called in with the flu." Perfect. I'd been looking for an excuse to spend more time at the hospital, to observe Erica in her natural habitat. As operations manager, I had access to most areas of the building and a legitimate reason to be anywhere I needed to be. The regional medical center squatted on the hill above downtown like a concrete and glass monument to modern healthcare. I'd been working there for 12 years, ever since we'd moved back to Granite Street to be closer to my aging parents. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and it had allowed Erica to pursue her administrative career without worrying about our finances. I badged into the building through the employee entrance and made my way to the administrative wing. The morning briefing was routine: bed counts, staffing issues, maintenance requests, the kind of nuts and bolts work that kept the hospital functioning while the doctors and administrators got the glory. "Danny, good to see you." Dr. Patterson appeared at my elbow as the meeting broke up. He was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who ran the emergency department with military precision. I wanted to thank Erica for her help with the scheduling system over the weekend. She really saved us from a major headache. My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "Oh?" The new software crashed Saturday evening, right in the middle of updating the Monday schedule. I called her around 9 and she walked me through the backup procedure. Could have been a disaster otherwise. I nodded, managing what I hoped was an appropriate smile. She's always been good in a crisis. "The best. We're lucky to have her." Dr. Patterson hurried off to deal with whatever emergency was currently consuming his attention, leaving me standing in the hallway with the taste of my wife's lies bitter in my mouth. 9 o'clock Saturday night. Erica had taken that call at my brother's wedding around 8:30. The conversation I'd overheard had lasted maybe 10 minutes, and it definitely hadn't been about scheduling software. I made my way to the administrative floor, where Erica's office was located in a corner suite with windows overlooking the city. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Erica and someone else, their conversation too muted to make out words. "Danny." Melanie Chen emerged from the elevator, her smile as sharp as ever. "What brings you to the executive level? Slumming with the important people?" "Maintenance request from Dr. Patterson," I said, holding up my clipboard. "Something about the air conditioning in the conference room." "Always working. I admire that about you, Danny. Very reliable." The way she said it made reliability sound like a character flaw. I was about to respond when Erica's office door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confident bearing that came from never having to worry about money or job security. Nathan Wallace. I recognized him from the hospital's newsletter, where he'd been featured in an article about innovative partnerships between healthcare and technology. He was the CEO of some startup that was supposedly revolutionizing patient care through artificial intelligence. He was also, I realized with a sick certainty, the owner of the voice I'd heard on Erica's phone Saturday night. "Nathan, you remember my husband, Danny," Erica said, appearing in her doorway. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, and she was smoothing down her skirt in a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she was nervous. "Of course. Good to see you again, Dan." Nathan extended his hand with the kind of firm grip that was supposed to communicate success and authority. "Your wife's been invaluable in helping us understand the operational challenges of implementing our platform." "I'm sure she has," I said, matching his grip and holding it just a beat too long. Erica's always been very hands-on with her projects. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes, but his smile never wavered. "Well, I should let you get back to work. Erica, we'll continue our discussion later?" "Of course. I'll call you this afternoon." Nathan nodded to me and headed for the elevator, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. I watched him go, noting the way he moved with easy confidence through a world that had always welcomed him. "What was that about?" Erica asked, closing her office door behind her. "What was what about?" "That look you gave Nathan, and the way you shook his hand." I shrugged. "Just being friendly. Isn't that what you always tell me to do at hospital functions? Network, make connections?" She studied my face for a moment, then seemed to decide I wasn't worth worrying about. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Was there something you needed?" "Dr. Patterson wanted me to check the conference room air conditioning. He said you helped him with some computer problems over the weekend." "The scheduling system crashed. I walked him through the backup procedure over the phone." The lie came so easily I almost believed it myself. "That was good of you, giving up your Saturday night to help a colleague." "It's called being professional, Danny. You should try it sometime." The barb hit home, as she'd probably intended. I'd never been good at office politics, never learned how to smile and shake hands and pretend that people I didn't like were my best friends. It was one of the reasons I'd stayed in operations while Erica climbed the administrative ladder. I should get back to work, I said. Yes, you should. I spent the rest of the morning making my rounds, checking on maintenance requests and equipment issues, but my mind kept drifting back to Nathan Wallace and the way he'd looked at my wife, the way she'd looked at him. During my lunch break, I drove to Mick's Gym on the south side of town. The place was a throwback to another era. Heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, speed bags rattling against their platforms, the smell of sweat and leather and honest work. Mick was working with a young kid on the heavy bag, calling out combinations and corrections. He looked up when I walked in, his weathered face creasing into a grin. "Danny boy, I didn't expect to see you until Thursday." "Needed to hit something," I said, grabbing my gloves from the locker. "Rough day at the office?" "Something like that." I spent 45 minutes working out my frustrations on the heavy bag, my mind clearing with each punch. Physical exertion had always been my way of thinking through problems, of finding clarity in the midst of chaos. When I finished, Mick was waiting with a towel and a bottle of water. "Feel better?" "Some." "Want to talk about it?" I looked around the gym, at the young fighters working on their technique, at the old-timers who came in to relive their glory days. This was a place where things were simple, where problems were solved with hard work and determination. "What would you do if you found out someone you trusted was lying to you?" Mick considered the question, his eyes studying my face. "Depends on the lie, I guess, and depends on why they were telling it." "What if it was a big lie, the kind that changes everything?" "Then I'd want to know the truth before I did anything I couldn't take back." I nodded, knowing he was right but not liking it. The truth was a luxury I wasn't sure I could afford. Sometimes ignorance really was bliss, but I'd never been the type to stick my head in the sand and hope problems would solve themselves. If Erica was having an affair, and every instinct I had was screaming that she was, then I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that would stand up to scrutiny. "Thanks, Mick." "Anytime, son. And Danny, whatever's eating at you, don't let it consume you. That way lies nothing but trouble." I drove back to work with Mick's words echoing in my head. Don't let it consume you. Good advice, but easier said than done. When your entire world was built on trust, what happened when that foundation started to crack? The afternoon passed slowly, each hour marked by the growing certainty that my marriage was over. Not officially, not yet, but in all the ways that mattered. The question now was what I was going to do about it. By the time I got home, I had the beginnings of a plan. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt like slowly drowning in plain sight. Erica would leave for work each morning with a kiss on my cheek and a promise to try to be home for dinner. More often than not, she'd call around 5 to say she was running late, that something had come up, that I should go ahead and eat without her. I started documenting everything: times, dates, excuses, the story she told versus the reality I could verify. It became an obsession, this careful cataloging of deception, but it also gave me a sense of purpose. On a Thursday evening in early November, I was sitting in my office when I heard Erica's key in the front door. According to my notes, she was 43 minutes later than she'd promised when she called. "Danny, I'm home." Her voice carried that forced cheerfulness that meant she was feeling guilty about something. "In here," I called back, quickly minimizing the document on my screen. She appeared in the doorway, still in her work clothes, her hair slightly messed despite her obvious attempts to smooth it down. "Sorry I'm late. The meeting with the board ran longer than expected." "No problem. I made pasta. There's some left if you're hungry." I grabbed something on the way home, but thanks. She hovered in the doorway, fidgeting with her purse strap. "What are you working on?" "Just some reports for tomorrow's staff meeting. Nothing exciting." She nodded, but I could see her mind was elsewhere. "I think I'm going to take a shower and go to bed early. It's been a long day." "Of course. I'll be up in a bit." After she disappeared upstairs, I reopened my document and added the latest entry. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled through the hospital's public calendar. There had been no board meeting scheduled for today. In fact, the next board meeting wasn't until the following Tuesday. Another lie to add to the growing pile. I waited until I heard the shower running, then quietly made my way upstairs. Erica's purse was sitting on the dresser, and her phone was charging on the nightstand. My heart was pounding as I picked up the device, knowing I was crossing a line I could never uncross. The phone was password protected, but I knew Erica well enough to make educated guesses. Our anniversary? No. Her birthday? No. My birthday? Also no. Then I remembered something, the date she'd gotten her first promotion at the hospital, the day she'd called the most important day of her professional life. The phone unlocked. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her recent calls. Nathan Wallace's name appeared with disturbing frequency, often multiple times per day. Text messages that made my stomach churn with their casual intimacy. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was incredible. I love the way you make me feel. I took screenshots of the most damning messages, sending them to my own phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. By the time Erica emerged from the bathroom in her robe, I was downstairs making myself a cup of tea. "You're still up," she said, settling onto the couch beside me. "Couldn't sleep? Too much coffee today, I think." She curled up against my side, her head on my shoulder, and for a moment it felt like old times, like we were still the couple who'd fallen in love 20 years ago, who'd promised to face whatever life threw at them together. "Danny." "Yeah? Do you ever think about what our life might have been like if we'd made different choices?" The question caught me off guard. "What kind of different choices?" "I don't know. If we'd moved away from Granite Street when we were young, if we'd traveled more, taken more risks." "Do you regret the choices we made?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I wonder if we settled too early, if we got comfortable and stopped growing. Is that what you think happened? We stopped growing? Maybe we grew in different directions." I felt her words like a physical weight on my chest. "And now? Now I don't know what to think." We sat in silence after that, both lost in our own thoughts. When she finally went to bed, I remained on the couch, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what felt like a confession. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the downtown library. I needed a computer that couldn't be traced back to me, and I needed to do some research that I didn't want showing up in my browser history. Nathan Wallace had quite a digital footprint. His company, Synapse Solutions, was supposedly developing AI-powered diagnostic tools for hospitals. He'd given interviews to trade publications, spoken at conferences, even appeared on a local business show. He was also married. The discovery hit me like a punch to the gut. His wife was an elegant blonde named Jennifer, a pediatric surgeon at Boston Children's Hospital. They lived in an expensive suburb north of the city and had 2 young children, so Nathan was cheating on his wife with mine, while I played the role of the oblivious husband. The symmetry was almost poetic in its cruelty. I spent the rest of the day researching Nathan's business, his background, his connections. If I was going to war, and that's what this was starting to feel like, I needed to know my enemy. Synapse Solutions was burning through venture capital at an alarming rate, with no viable product to show for it. Nathan's previous company had gone bankrupt under suspicious circumstances. His MBA was from a school that had since lost its accreditation. In other words, he was a fraud, a smooth-talking con man who'd somehow convinced my wife and a bunch of investors that he was the next Steve Jobs. That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when Erica came home. She looked surprised to see me, as if she'd forgotten I existed. "You're home early," she said, setting down her purse. "I wasn't feeling well this morning, so I stayed home." "Are you better now?" "Much better, thanks. How was your day?" "Fine, busy, the usual." She was already moving toward the stairs, clearly wanting to end the conversation. "Erica?" She paused, one hand on the banister. "Yes?" "I've been thinking about what you said last night, about making different choices." "What about it?" "Maybe you're right. Maybe we have grown in different directions." Something flickered in her eyes. Relief? Hope? Guilt? "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time we both admitted that this isn't working anymore." She came back down the stairs slowly, her expression cautious. "Are you talking about separation?" "I'm talking about honesty, about finally saying out loud what we've both been thinking." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "Danny, if this is about me working late, it's not about you working late. It's about you lying to me." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Erica's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, indignation, fear, and finally something that might have been relief. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about Nathan Wallace." Her face went pale. "Danny, I know about the phone calls, the text messages, the fake meetings, and imaginary emergencies." "It's not what you think?" "It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I actually knew versus how much I was guessing. "I never meant for this to happen," she said finally. "But it did happen." "Yes. How long? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She took a shaky breath. 3 months, maybe 4. So it had started around the time I'd first noticed her behavior changing. My instincts had been right all along. Do you love him? The question seemed to surprise her. Danny, it's a simple question, Erica. Do you love him? I think so, yes. The honesty was almost worse than the lies had been. At least the lies had left room for hope. Then I guess we know where we stand, I said. What happens now? I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. The man who'd spent 20 years trying to make her happy was gone, replaced by someone I didn't entirely recognize. Now we figure out how to end this with whatever dignity we have left. She nodded, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Danny. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry wasn't going to be enough. Not nearly enough. The divorce papers were filed on a gray December morning that matched my mood perfectly. Erica had moved out the week before, taking only her clothes and personal items, leaving behind 20 years of shared memories and accumulated possessions. The house felt cavernous without her, every room echoing with the ghosts of better times. I'd thrown myself into work, taking on extra shifts and volunteer assignments, anything to keep my mind occupied and my hands busy. But late at night, when the hospital was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, the anger would surface. Not the hot, explosive rage that might have led to shouting matches or thrown dishes, but something colder and more calculating. Erica had moved into a downtown apartment, a sleek modern place that Nathan was reportedly helping her pay for. According to the neighborhood gossip network, which was more efficient than any intelligence agency, they were being relatively discreet about their relationship, at least in public. That was about to change. I'd spent weeks gathering information, building a comprehensive file on Nathan Wallace and his business practices. What I'd discovered was even worse than I'd initially suspected. Synapse Solutions wasn't just burning through investor money, they were actively defrauding their clients. The AI diagnostic system they were selling to hospitals didn't actually exist. The demonstrations Nathan gave were elaborate hoaxes, using actors and predetermined scenarios to simulate artificial intelligence. Hospitals that had signed contracts were paying for software that would never be delivered. It was a house of cards waiting to collapse, and I was going to be the one to give it a push. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning in January. I'd arranged to meet with Dr. Patterson and several other department heads, ostensibly to discuss operational improvements. Instead, I presented them with evidence of Nathan's fraud. Medical records that had supposedly been analyzed by Synapse's AI system, but which contained obvious errors that any real artificial intelligence would have caught. Financial documents showing money flowing into Nathan's personal accounts rather than research and development, testimonials from other hospitals that had been bilked by similar schemes. This is incredibly serious, Dr. Patterson said, his face grave as he reviewed the documents. If what you're saying is true, we could be looking at criminal charges. I believe it is true, I said, and I think the hospital board needs to see this information immediately. Within hours, the hospital had terminated its contract with Synapse Solutions and launched an internal investigation. Nathan's access to the building was revoked, and security was instructed to escort him off the premises if he attempted to enter. I was in my office that afternoon when my phone rang. Nathan's name appeared on the screen, and I let it ring twice before answering. Danny, we need to talk, he said without preamble. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Nathan. This is about business, not personal matters. Everything is personal now. There was a long pause. You're making a mistake. You don't understand the full situation. I understand enough. Meet me for coffee, 1 hour, the place on Market Street. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, you're going to regret it. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I found myself curious about what Nathan thought he could possibly say to change the situation. 1 hour, I said, and hung up. The coffee shop on Market Street was one of those trendy places that served drinks with names I couldn't pronounce at prices that would have fed a family of 4 back when I was growing up. Nathan was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall like a man expecting trouble. He looked different than he had at the hospital, less polished, more desperate. His expensive suit couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes or the way his hands trembled slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down across from him. You have 5 minutes. Danny, I know you're angry about Erica, and I understand that. But what you're doing is going to hurt a lot of innocent people. Innocent people like the hospitals you've been defrauding? The technology is real. We're just behind schedule on the implementation. The technology doesn't exist, Nathan. I've seen your code. It's smoke and mirrors. His composure cracked slightly. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I also know about your previous company, the one that went bankrupt owing investors $12 million. I know about the SEC investigation that you somehow managed to avoid. I know about a lot of things. Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. If you think destroying my company is going to win Erica back, you're wrong. She loves me, not you. Nothing you do is going to change that. This isn't about winning Erica back? Then what is it about? I met his eyes across the small table, letting him see the cold certainty there. It's about consequences. It's about making sure that people who lie and cheat and hurt others don't get to walk away without paying a price. You're going to destroy everything she's worked for, her career, her reputation. She destroyed those things herself when she chose to get involved with a con man. Nathan's face flushed with anger. You sanctimonious piece of garbage. You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? The noble working man, too pure to get his hands dirty. I'm not noble, Nathan, but I'm not a thief either. Everyone's a thief in their own way. You stole 20 years of Erica's life, keeping her trapped in a marriage that was going nowhere. The accusation stung because there was truth in it, but not enough truth to matter. Our 5 minutes are up, I said, standing to leave. This isn't over, Danny. Yes, it is. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. Nathan was finished, even if he didn't know it yet. The hospital board would meet tomorrow, and by the end of the week, word would spread throughout the medical community about Synapse Solutions and its fraudulent CEO. But I wasn't done. Not yet. That evening, I called Jennifer Wallace. Mrs. Wallace, this is Danny Mitchell. I work at Regional Medical Center. Yes? Her voice was cautious, professional. I'm calling about your husband's business relationship with our hospital. I think there are some things you should know. The conversation lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, Jennifer Wallace knew everything about her husband's affair with my wife, his fraudulent business practices, and the investigation that was about to destroy his career. She thanked me for calling and hung up without another word. The next morning, Erica called me for the first time since she'd moved out. What did you do? She demanded without preamble. Good morning to you too, Erica. Nathan's wife filed for divorce yesterday. She's taking the kids and half of everything he owns. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't lie to me, Danny. You called her, didn't you? She had a right to know what kind of man she was married to. You vindictive, petty little man. You couldn't stand the thought of me being happy, so you had to destroy everything. I didn't destroy anything, Erica. Nathan did that all by himself when he decided to build his company on lies and his marriage on deception. The hospital fired me. That stopped me cold. What? They fired me this morning, said my relationship with Nathan created a conflict of interest and compromised my professional judgment. I felt a stab of something that might have been guilt, but I pushed it aside. I'm sorry. No, you're not. This is exactly what you wanted. What I wanted was a wife who didn't lie to me. Well, congratulations, Danny. You don't have a wife at all anymore. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone, trying to process what I was feeling. Victory, regret, relief, maybe all three. That afternoon, I drove to Mick's gym and spent 2 hours beating the heavy bag until my hands were raw and my shoulders ached. When I was done, Mick handed me a towel and a bottle of water, just like always. Feel better? He asked. I don't know. Revenge is a funny thing, he said, settling onto the bench beside me. Sometimes you get everything you thought you wanted and realize it wasn't worth wanting. And sometimes people get exactly what they deserve. Maybe so, but the question is, what do you do now? I looked around the gym, at the familiar sights and sounds that had been my refuge for so many years. What did I do now? How did you rebuild a life after you'd systematically destroyed the old one? I guess I figure out how to move forward. That's all any of us can do, son. That's all any of us can do. I drove home through the familiar streets of Granite Street, past the neighbors who would soon be whispering about my failed marriage and messy divorce. The house was waiting for me, empty and quiet, filled with memories I wasn't sure I wanted to keep, but it was mine now, all of it. The good memories and the bad, the hopes and the disappointments, the love and the betrayal. It was my life, and I was finally free to live it on my own terms, even if I wasn't entirely sure what those terms were going to be. The story was over, but somehow I didn't feel like the victor. I felt like a man standing in the ruins of everything he'd once believed in, trying to figure out what to build from the ashes. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask for. The chance to start over, to learn from their mistakes, to become someone better than they'd been before. Or maybe I was just telling myself stories to make the emptiness more bearable. Either way, tomorrow would come, and I would face it like I'd faced everything else. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one step forward into whatever came next. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and saw a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Mitchell, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to speak with you about Nathan Wallace and Synapse Solutions. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I'd be happy to help, Detective. When would be convenient? How about now? Perfect. I'll be right there. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, feeling lighter than I had in months. The story might be over, but apparently there was still an epilogue to write. And this time, I was going to make sure it had a proper ending.